Well, we're joined now by Adrienne Roth, who's done a series of books called Be a Great Thinker. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing smashing, thanks. It's a lovely sunny day here.
Not here.
I'm sure it'll brighten up eventually. So what is the series Be a Great Thinker all about?
Well, it's a theory. It's a series that's meant for middle grade to young adults, and it's on all about critical thinking and philosophy and philosophers. So book one is actually an introduction into critical thinking and what that is all about, and how that actually affects your life, from the basic stuff to the more complex issues. And then we go into the different philosophers. So book two is about Socrates. Book three is about Plato. Book four, which will be coming out at the end of the summer, will be about Aristotle, and then we're going to go into all the types of different philosophers, from the Eastern philosophers and on and on. So that's the whole series, is basically introducing young adults and even their parents to philosophy and philosophers and critical thinking, which is really desperately needed.
Yeah.
And that's basically what they're about in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? It's targeted to younger readers, but it's interesting to everyone, right?
It is, because it's not written down. Actually, it's really hard to write down on philosophers. The stuff that you have to research on them and get to know about them. I mean, these are the people that really look at this stuff are they're scholarly. They're in Ivy League colleges. They have think tanks, and they're writing these dissertations about them. So to really break it down for anybody to understand it takes a lot of effort. But it is written for a younger audience. But honestly, anybody can read them, and anybody who is kind of even interested in learning who these people are, doesn't matter what your age is, these books will help you understand that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because these philosophers obviously are from many years ago, but the things they said are still very much relevant, aren't they?
They totally are. In fact, they're kind of in our culture all the time. One of the things I discovered, I'm even discovering things as I'm doing these books. One of the things I discovered was on Plato. He had his theory of forms, and he created the allegory. He had allegories for everything. The allegory of the cave, which is that kind of concept. Are we really living in reality? And the creator of the Matrix series, he took it from took his whole story from the allegory of the caves. So now we have a glitch in the matrix is basically a Platonic ideology. So it's really part of our vocabulary, of our vernacular here, as to what these philosophers have brought into our lives. We don't even realize how much we understand philosophy, how much we take it in. And that's really the crazy part. It's like we're all really philosophers, but we don't even know where they come from.
Yeah. And as well, the world today seems to be lacking in a little bit of that critical thinking, isn't it?
Oh, that's an understatement. Yeah. This is really why I wrote the books. Well, first of all, I'm kind of activist in my own way. And my son, Matthew, who wrote the books with me, he is more the philosopher. So he was always involved in that kind of world. And I kind of realized there wasn't books on that. But the thing with that really gets to me is that there is such a lack of critical thinking, and we need to get back to that. And I really want to make sure that happens. That's what I want to bring out in my books. I'm actually starting a project that's going to kind of coincide with my books. I want to create a critical thinking revolution, and I'm actually got merchandise to help people bring it out. I want people to be part of that critical thinking revolution and just tell people I'm done with all the nonsense. Let's start thinking critically. That's how we can change the world, is if we actually think about the world. So that's partly what I'm doing.
Yeah. Why do you think there is a lack of critical thinking today? Is maybe a lot of the thinking being done for us, maybe because of social media and things like that? Or has it actually been going on way before Twitter existed?
Well, even I'm a Gen Xer, even in my generation, they were starting with with just the lack of thinking, we didn't really get into books that much. People were thinking for us. But I really do think in the 90s and in the early 2000s, when social media really started to take off, it's kind of like the nonsense that's there. You can put out almost anything into social media and people will believe it instead of actually looking at it and going, okay, that's really odd. They just believe it. It's like there's no questioning it. And then if it's an idea, like I use flat earth as an idea. Yeah. I grew up, we all knew the earth is not flat, but suddenly that's a thing. And I'm sorry if there's anybody in your audience that believes that, but you really got to think about it. Is this true? Is this really a fact? Not listen to people, even if it sounds real and they bring out all these projectors and they put things up and they have this so-called evidence. Yeah. Really, for millennia and many millennia, we've actually known that the earth is round and people have actually been in space. Can you not understand that? So that was really where it started. Like, really, we're really starting to take in information that's incorrect. I mean, even with COVID, people were listening to things that were just kind of crazy instead of really logically looking at stuff and understanding the truth. And social media did start it. And I think it continues to make it happen further and further. And I think that's what we need to stop. We need to really review that and what's going on.
The thing is, though, a lot of these flat earthers and conspiracy theorists, if some of them like to call themselves that, would argue that they are the critical thinkers and it's us that's being blindly led by false information.
Sure. But are they really questioning everything? Are they really going down to the nitty-gritty of the points? I think they stop at a certain point where their biases are now revealed and they're like, oh, you know what? I don't want to go further. I don't want to look at something else. I like this theory. I think it's a comfortableness that they get into. They're like, oh, I found something. I'm attached to it. I know all the evidence, but really, have you looked at all the evidence? Have you questioned? Like Socrates was great. He had the Socratic method. And the Socratic method is questioning, not just questioning everything, but really questioning even the questions and getting it down to the nitty gritty. And if your argument doesn't hold up, it's not a good argument. And a lot of times, though they're thinking they believe they're thinking critically, they haven't gone through the whole argument. They haven't looked at every single point and said, you know what, maybe why does this not make sense? If this doesn't make sense, maybe this doesn't fit here. And it's okay to go through the process. But if everybody's saying one thing and you're saying another thing and say, well, I know it all. Do you really know it all? Question it again. Keep questioning and you may never find the answer and you may never have the truth. But if you only stop and say, this is it, this is the end of the story, I believe this, nothing else matters, that's not critical thinking. That's just you're just proving your bias is correct. And doesn't matter what anybody says. No one can filter through that. You can't be that way. You have to be able to move forward from that.
Yeah. So what do you hope the readers and their parents will actually get from reading this series?
I think I want them to find a way to open their minds up to see different aspects of what people think from the past, how it reflects their lives now. I mean, honestly, I wrote the Socrates book kind of as a self-help book. In essence, because I didn't realize it, but he put a lot of things into his philosophies and his concepts that help somebody live their life, the best life. And so what I want from them is just to understand who all these philosophers were, even if it's not, I mean, it's just a basic start from that. And then take it and use it in their own lives. Use it to get into an argument with somebody and then try to win that argument. I mean, really just find that critical thinker inside of yourself and really build on that. That's what I want. And each philosopher, and you don't have to believe in the philosophers. You don't have to even believe what they say. That's okay. Yeah. It's not there for you to prove that they're right or wrong. It's there for you to look at it and say, this doesn't fit my ideology, but then you have to understand, why does it not fit my ideology? Or, oh yeah, I get that. Or I never thought of that. Just open your mind and see the world a little bit differently. And that's really what I want everybody to take away from that. Whether it's a young adult who is going out into the world or somebody who's been in the world and is kind of like, the world is just crazy and I don't even want to deal with the world anymore. Well, look at somebody else's opinion. Look at that. And then bring yourself back down to that point where you are are almost starting from scratch. And that's kind of what I want these books to kind of get into everybody's head and really understand that and really understand the world through the philosophers.
And do you think you will do more books in the future, maybe even more in this series, or about a similar thing, or maybe even something completely different?
Yeah, I'm both actually. So this book series is just in the beginning stages. Like I said, our next book is on Aristotle. Then I'll be going into the Eastern philosophers. And there's so many philosophers and so many philosophical ideologies I want to touch upon. Things that people have had a different notion about, but don't understand that, completely understand them to really get people to understand that. And yes, so my imprint is Wolf Lake Press, and I will be doing other types of books. I'm even thinking about doing books on cultures and how to understand different cultures in society and looking at other things as well. So that's probably my next one. And these are all based on things that I've been interested in, but I don't think people really understand them. And just to try to bring those understanding to the average people in a way that they relate to it, to their own lives. And that's really what I'm looking to do. So yes, I will be doing that eventually. I want to get through the first few books of this series before I start that one.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, where are all the places that we're able to find your current book series, Be a Great Thinker?
Okay. So you can definitely go online to my email, or not my email, but my website, sorry. It's www.beagreatthinker.com. You can also find the books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, Apple. I will hopefully have them in paperback in libraries and bookstores, but right now, for the most part, you can get in paperback on Amazon. For the first book, the other two books, I'm going to be working with libraries and bookstores to get those in directly. But the ebooks are definitely almost pretty much anywhere you can find ebooks.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for joining us on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.